Everyone in the ballroom heard the laughter before Clara Whitmore realized it was about her. The music had only just ended. Candlelight trembled across polished marble floors. Ladies adjusted silk gloves. Gentlemen gathered near the champagne tables with quiet amusement in their eyes, and at the center of it stood Clara's father, Baron Whitmore, drunk enough to forget dignity. "She believes she can save this family with books," he said loudly, swaying slightly. "Imagine that. A girl who thinks intelligence matters more than beauty." A few nobles laughed politely. Clara felt every gaze turned toward her. Heat climbed her throat, but she kept her spine straight. She stood near the ballroom's tall windows in a pale blue gown that had been altered 3 times to hide how old it truly was. The hem had begun to fray despite her careful stitching. Her father lifted his glass again. "If any gentleman here wishes to marry a bankrupt baron's daughter, I shall gladly include our debts as part of her dowry." More laughter, not cruel. Worse than cruel, pitying. Clara lowered her eyes before anyone could see the humiliation burning behind them. Across the room, she noticed one man was not laughing. Duke Adrian Ashcombe stood near the grand staircase, dressed entirely in black. Tall, controlled, silent, the most powerful duke in England, and the coldest. Women adored him because he rarely spoke. Men respected him because he always seemed untouchable. Rumors followed him endlessly. Some said he despised society. Others believed arrogance had frozen his heart long ago. But tonight, Clara noticed something strange. While others watched her humiliation with amusement, the Duke watched her father, not with mockery, with quiet disgust. Their eyes met only briefly, then Adrian turned away first. It should not have mattered, yet somehow that hurt more. Because for one impossible second, Clara had almost wanted him to understand her. The ballroom grew louder as another dance began. Clara stepped toward the terrace doors, desperate for air. Rain had begun outside. Soft and silver beneath the winter lanterns, she pressed trembling fingers against the stone railing. "You should not stand alone tonight." His voice startled her. She turned sharply. The Duke of Ashcombe stood behind her now, his dark coat damp from the rain. Up close he looked even more severe. Sharp jaw, tired eyes, controlled posture, but there was hesitation in him too, a strange hesitation. "I assure you, Your Grace," Clara said quietly, "I am quite accustomed to standing alone." Something shifted in his expression, not pity, recognition. He looked toward the ballroom where her father still entertained nobles with humiliating stories. Then Adrian said softly, "You did not deserve that," almost laughed. No one had said those words to her in years. She steadied herself carefully. "Kindness from a duke is dangerous, Your Grace. People may misunderstand." His gaze lingered on her face. "They already misunderstand everything." For a moment, rain and music blurred together between them, then footsteps interrupted the silence. Lady Beatrice Montfort approached the terrace with elegant confidence, her ruby gown glowing beneath the ballroom light, beautiful, wealthy, perfectly suited for a duke. "There you are, Adrian," she said warmly before glancing at Clara. "Oh, forgive me, I did not realize you were occupied." Immediately stepped aside, but as she passed Adrian, she noticed something strange again. His hand tightened slightly against the terrace railing, as if he wanted to stop her, yet he said nothing, and Clara walked away believing she had imagined the entire moment. That night, long after the ballroom emptied, Clara sat beside candlelight in her tiny bedroom, reviewing unpaid debts her father could no longer hide. Their estate would soon be lost. There were no relatives willing to help, no marriage prospects, no future. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Their elderly housemaid entered carrying a sealed letter. "For you, miss." Clara frowned. The wax seal belonged to Ashcombe House. Her pulse quickened. Inside was only one sentence: "I require a writer. Arrive tomorrow evening alone." Clara stared at the letter while rain struck the windows harder outside, and for reasons she could not explain, fear and hope arrived together in her chest. Ashcombe House felt colder than any palace Clara had ever entered. The corridors were silent. The servants spoke carefully, as though sound itself might disturb the Duke. She was escorted into a private library, lit only by firelight. Adrian stood beside the windows, one hand behind his back. "You came," he said. "You summoned me." A faint shadow of amusement touched his face. Then it disappeared. He gestured toward the desk. Papers covered its surface. Half-written speeches, parliamentary notes. Ink scratched through entire paragraphs in frustration. Clara looked between the pages slowly. "You wrote these?" "Yes." "You hate every word." His jaw tightened slightly. "You are direct. You requested honesty, I assume." Settled again. Then Adrian walked toward the fireplace, shoulders rigid. "There will be public debates this season," he said quietly. "I require assistance preparing remarks." Understood immediately, not because of the speeches, because of the pauses, the incomplete sentences, the desperate revisions. Her gaze lifted carefully to him. The Duke looked away first. and suddenly she knew he had a stutter not mild, severe enough to destroy a public man. Everything about him made sense now. The silence, the avoidance, the coldness mistaken for arrogance. He was afraid. Adrian spoke again, slower this time. You are educated. Your former tutor praised your writing. You investigated me. I investigate everyone. Should have been offended. Instead, she felt an ache she could not explain, because beneath his control lived constant fear. One public failure could ruin him. One moment of hesitation before Parliament and society would devour him alive. You wish me to ghostwrite your speeches, she said softly. Yes. If I refuse, his eyes finally met hers. You will not, was arrogance in the words, but desperation underneath. Clara noticed both. Over the following weeks, their arrangement became secret and strangely intimate. She arrived after dark, always through the side entrance, always alone. They worked for hours beside firelight while rain tapped against tall windows. At first, Adrian remained distant, cold, professional, but Clara began noticing small things, the way he relaxed slightly whenever she read aloud, the way he watched her when he believed she was not looking, the exhaustion hidden beneath his composed exterior. One evening, while rehearsing a speech, Adrian stumbled over a phrase repeatedly. Frustration darkened his face. Again, he muttered, you are tired. Again, he tried once more. The stutter caught hard in his throat. Adrian slammed the papers onto the desk suddenly. I said again. Clara flinched. The silence afterward felt heavy. Adrian closed his eyes briefly. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. I apologize. Looked at him carefully. Powerful men rarely apologized. You are angry with yourself, she said gently. Not with me. His expression changed then, as though kindness unsettled him more than criticism ever could. Late that same night, Clara prepared to leave when thunder shook the estate violently. Rain poured across the windows. You cannot return home in this weather, Adrian said. I have no choice. Without another word, he removed his coat and placed it over her shoulders. The warmth stunned her, not because of the gesture, because he avoided touching her while doing it. As though restraint cost him effort, their eyes met. And for one dangerous second, neither moved. Then footsteps echoed down the corridor. Adrian stepped back immediately. Distance returned to his face like a locked door. Your carriage is prepared, he said coldly. Clara left confused by how quickly tenderness vanished around him. But inside the carriage, she realized something else. The coat still carried the faint scent of cedar and winter smoke, and she held it against herself the entire journey home. By spring, the Duke of Ashcombe had become the most admired speaker in Parliament. Newspapers praised his intelligence, his composure, his vision for reform. Men repeated his speeches across London drawing rooms. Women watched him with renewed fascination during every ballroom appearance. And each time applause followed him, Clara felt something complicated twist inside her chest, because the words belonged to her, yet she remained invisible. One evening during a crowded gala, Clara stood near the orchestra balcony listening as noblewomen praised Adrian endlessly. Brilliant men are always dangerous, one whispered. Handsome, another sighed. Lady Beatrice smiled knowingly. The Duke has become impossible to ignore lately, lowered her gaze quietly. Then she heard another voice behind her. Miss Whitmore. She turned. Adrian stood there. The ballroom softened around her instantly. You wish to speak with me, Your Grace? I wish to dance. Her breath caught. Around them, nearby conversations slowed with curiosity. A duke did not publicly dance with a bankrupt baron's daughter unless society already suspected something. You should not ask me, Clara said softly. Why? Because people are watching. I know. That answer unsettled her most of all. Still, she placed her hand in his. The ballroom music shifted into a slow waltz. Adrian guided her carefully across the floor. His hand remained respectful against her waist, but his gaze never left her face. You avoided me all evening, he said quietly. You have become very popular lately. A faint sadness crossed his expression. That displeases you. It no longer concerns me. The words were calm, yet Adrian's jaw tightened. For the first time, Clara realized something startling. The Duke cared what she thought of him. The discovery frightened her, because she cared too much already. As they danced, whispers spread across the ballroom. Clara heard fragments. Ambitious girl, clearly encouraging him, after his title. The humiliation returned slowly like cold water beneath a door. Adrian seemed to hear it too. His posture stiffened. Suddenly Lady Beatrice approached them with a warm smile sharp enough to wound. Your Grace, she interrupted lightly, the Prime Minister has been searching for you. Adrian released Clara immediately, too quickly. The absence of his hand felt humiliating. Beatrice glanced toward Clara's worn gown before smiling politely. How fortunate that kindness comes so naturally to noblemen. Understood the insult perfectly. She stepped back before Adrian could speak. You should not neglect important company on my account, Your Grace. Then she walked away with what dignity remained. Outside, rain drifted softly across the stone steps. Clara stood alone beneath the archway fighting tears she refused to shed. A moment later, Adrian appeared behind her. "You left. I was dismissed." "I did not dismiss you." She turned toward him finally. "Then why did it feel as though I embarrassed you?" The question landed harder than she intended. Adrian looked genuinely shaken. "I would never be ashamed of you, but you are afraid of them." Silence, painfully honest silence. Clara stepped back slowly. "You hide from society because of your stutter," she whispered. "I understand that, but tonight you hid from me too." His face tightened immediately. No one ever spoke directly about his weakness, yet Clara had, and somehow that honesty hurt because it mattered. "I protect what must remain private," Adrian said carefully. "Even if it wounds others." He had no answer. The rain deepened between them. Finally Clara bowed slightly. "Good evening, Your Grace." This time, when she walked away, Adrian watched her go with something dangerously close to regret. Summer brought rumors, cruel ones. People began whispering that Clara Whitmore had enchanted the Duke of Ashcombe for political influence. Others claimed she secretly controlled his speeches. A few even suggested she intended to trap him into marriage. The gossip spread through London drawing rooms like spilled wine, and every whisper reached Clara eventually. She tried pretending it did not matter. But humiliation exhausted the heart slowly. One evening at Ashcombe House, she found Adrian reading a newspaper beside the fire. The headline mocked him openly, "The Duke's invisible advisor." His expression darkened as he folded the paper away. "You should dismiss me," Clara said quietly. "The rumors worsen daily. I do not care, but I do." Finally looked at her. "You wish to leave?" The question sounded too personal. Clara steadied herself. "I wish to survive society with some dignity remaining." Something painful crossed his face, then footsteps interrupted them. Lord Pembroke entered without warning, young, wealthy, charming, and dangerously observant. "Well," Pembroke drawled lightly, "the rumors appear true after all." Immediately stepped back. Adrian's voice hardened. "You entered without permission." Pembroke only smiled. "London grows curious. Ashcombe, a duke hiding away nightly with a baron's daughter. People will naturally speculate." Humiliation rise again, but worse was Adrian's silence. Pembroke studied Clara thoughtfully. "You are clever, Miss Whitmore. Clever women are rarely forgiven by society." He left. The library felt suffocatingly quiet. Clara gathered her papers quickly. "You should go," she whispered. Adrian moved toward her suddenly. "Clara, it is becoming difficult to breathe in this city." Honesty startled them both. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Adrian reached toward her carefully, not quite touching, as though afraid she might disappear. "You matter to me," he said quietly. Her heart ached at the words, because they were not enough, not anymore. "What am I to you?" she asked softly. The question hung between them. Adrian looked genuinely trapped. A duke could risk many things, but vulnerability terrified him most, and Clara saw the answer before he spoke. He could not choose her publicly, not against society, not against scandal, not against his own fear. She nodded slowly. "I understand." Her eyes already looked wounded. That night she cried for the first time in years, not because Adrian had rejected her, because part of him truly loved her, and still it was not enough. The scandal arrived 3 weeks later, violently. A political rival accused Adrian publicly of corruption involving estate funds and parliamentary bribery. Newspapers exploded with speculation. Crowds gathered outside Ashcombe House, enemies circled eagerly. And hidden beneath the accusations was a far more dangerous threat. Someone had discovered Adrian's private correspondence. If exposed, his speech rehearsals and written struggles would reveal the stutter he had hidden his entire life. The scandal could destroy him completely. Clara learned the truth accidentally when she overheard servants speaking in panic. That night she searched through records herself and discovered something horrifying. Lord Pembroke had fabricated evidence against Adrian, but Clara also uncovered proof linking Pembroke to illegal investments overseas, enough to destroy him instead. She spent the entire night organizing documents anonymously. By dawn, she arranged for the evidence to reach the proper authorities without Adrian's involvement ever becoming public. She should have disappeared quietly afterward, but she needed to warn him first. Ashcombe House was chaos when she arrived. Servants rushed through corridors, newspapers littered the floors, and inside the grand hall, dozens of nobles had gathered demanding explanations. Clara spotted Adrian standing near the staircase surrounded by political allies, exhausted, cornered, alone. Then someone noticed her. Lady Beatrice's voice cut sharply through the room. "There she is." Head turned, Clara froze. Pembroke smiled coldly. "Perhaps the Duke's little advisor can explain these unfortunate events." Whispers erupted instantly. Adrian's expression darkened. Clara stepped toward him anyway. "Your Grace, I have information regarding the accusations." "Enough." His voice sliced through the hall, too loud, too fast. Fear lived underneath it. Clara stared at him in shock. Adrian looked at the watching nobles, at the newspapers, at the danger closing around him, and terror won. She is merely a paid writer, he said coldly. Nothing more. Room fell silent. Clara stopped breathing. Adrian continued carefully, every word chosen for survival. Any assumptions regarding personal attachment have been entirely imagined. Spread softly through the crowd, someone whispered, "How embarrassing." Felt the humiliation physically, like something breaking inside her chest. Adrian would not look at her, not once. And that hurt more than the words themselves, because she suddenly understood. He feared exposure more than losing her. Clara nodded slowly, very slowly. "You wish, Your Grace." Her voice barely sounded human. Then she turned and walked out while society watched her ruin with fascination. No one followed her, not even Adrian. That same evening, the evidence Clara uncovered destroyed Pembroke's accusations entirely. The scandal vanished overnight. Newspapers praised the Duke's innocence. Society celebrated his brilliance once again. And Clara Whitmore disappeared from London without a single farewell. 3 years passed. The Duke of Ashcombe became one of the most respected men in England. People admired his speeches endlessly. His political influence expanded. His estates prospered. And none of it mattered anymore, because silence followed him everywhere. Adrian stopped attending unnecessary galas, stopped entertaining marriage discussions, stopped caring about applause. At night, he often sat alone in the same library where Clara once laughed softly beside candlelight. Only now he understood something unbearable. Every triumph carried her voice, every admired speech, every political victory, every moment society praised his intelligence, her words, her mind, her sacrifice, and he had destroyed her to protect himself. The realization poisoned him slowly. One winter evening, Adrian discovered an old locked drawer among Clara's remaining papers. Inside were copies of every speech she had written. Alongside them sat letters never sent, not love letters, worse, practical notes, suggestions for improving tenant conditions, charity reforms, estate protections for widows, ideas designed not for praise but for kindness. Adrian read until dawn, and for the first time in years he wept quietly, alone. A week later, an elderly servant approached him carefully. "There is something else you should know, Your Grace." Servant explained everything, how Clara had uncovered Pembroke's crimes, how she anonymously saved Adrian's reputation, how she protected him even after the public humiliation. Adrian felt physically ill. "She never told me. She asked us not to." The room blurred slightly, because suddenly he understood the full truth. Clara had loved him at his weakest, and he had abandoned her at hers. 3 days later, Adrian left London immediately. He searched for months, village after village, town after town, until finally, in early spring, he found her, not in another grand estate, not among nobility, but in a quiet coastal town beside the sea. She stood outside a small schoolhouse beneath pale morning sunlight, simple grey dress, hair pinned loosely, peaceful, and smiling. The sight nearly broke him, because she looked happy without him. Children gathered around her laughing while she handed out books. A man emerged from the schoolhouse carrying papers beneath one arm, gentle-faced, modest clothing, a schoolteacher. He smiled warmly at Clara before kissing her gloved hand. Adrian's chest tightened violently. The schoolteacher noticed him first. "Can we help you, sir?" Clara turned, and the moment her eyes met Adrian's, all warmth disappeared from her face. Not hatred, something worse, distance. She recovered quickly. "Your Grace." Title sounded unbearably formal. Adrian stepped toward her slowly. "I have searched for you," folded her hands calmly. "Why? Because I cannot survive what I did to you, because every room feels empty without your voice, because I loved you too late." But Adrian only said quietly, "I owe you an apology." Schoolteacher glanced between them uncertainly. Clara's expression remained composed. "You owe me nothing now." Those words frightened him more than anger ever could. Her name in the town was no longer Clara Whitmore. She called herself Clara Bennett now. A quieter life, a safer one. Adrian remained in town longer than necessary under the excuse of inspecting nearby coastal properties. In truth, he could not leave her again. Every day he watched her from a distance. She taught children patiently, walked along the shoreline in early mornings, smiled more easily now. And each peaceful moment sharpened his regret, because he realized something terrible. London had taught Clara to apologize for existing. Away from society, she had finally learned how to breathe. One rainy afternoon, Adrian entered the small bookstore near the harbor and found Clara alone organizing shelves. The tension between them arrived instantly. "You should return to London," she said quietly. "I tried." She glanced at him briefly. "You have everything you wanted there." "No." The honesty surprised them both. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Adrian stepped closer slowly. "I know what you did for me." Went still. The The scandal, he continued. Pembroke, the evidence, you saved me. She looked away immediately. It no longer matters. It matters to me. Emotion finally cracked through his controlled voice, Clara noticed. And for the first time in years, Adrian stopped hiding from vulnerability. I destroyed the only person who ever truly saw me, he said quietly. Her hands tightened around the books. You were afraid. I was cowardly. Trembled between them. Then Clara asked the question that haunted him most. Why did you come here, Adrian? Not your grace, Adrian. The sound nearly undid him. He answered honestly this time. Because I cannot endure a life where you are merely a memory. Pain flickered across her face, because part of her still loved him, and she hated that it still existed. Outside, thunder rolled softly across the sea. Clara stepped back carefully. I spent years believing I was difficult to love, she whispered. Do you understand what that does to a person? Adrian closed his eyes briefly. Yes. But eventually, she continued softly, I stopped needing your approval to feel worthy. Those words humbled him completely. For the first time in his life, the Duke understood helplessness. Power could not restore trust. Titles could not erase humiliation. And love could arrive too late. Days later, Adrian attended a small town gathering near the harbor. He watched Clara laugh beside the schoolteacher again. Jealousy struck harder than he expected, not because the man was wealthier or powerful, but because Clara looked safe beside him. The schoolteacher noticed Adrian's gaze eventually. You love her, he said quietly. Adrian did not deny it. The man sighed softly. Then why does she look afraid whenever you appear? The question shattered him, because Adrian finally understood. Clara no longer feared losing him. She feared losing herself again. 2 weeks later, Adrian prepared to leave the coastal town. He had no right to ask Clara for more. Love did not erase damage, and perhaps this was the punishment he deserved. On his final evening, rain covered the shoreline in silver mist. Adrian stood beside the harbor watching dark waves strike the rocks. Footsteps approached behind him. Clara, for a long moment, neither spoke. Then she handed him a folded paper. What is this? He asked softly. A speech. Stared at her. I no longer write speeches. You stopped speaking entirely after I left. The quiet truth settled painfully between them. Adrian unfolded the paper slowly. The handwriting was unmistakably hers. His throat tightened immediately. I cannot take this. You already have. A faint sad smile touched her lips. Rain drifted softly around them. Adrian looked at her carefully. Are you engaged to him? Clara hesitated. No. Hope struck him so suddenly it almost hurt. I could have been, she admitted. He is kind, steady. He never made me feel small. Adrian lowered his gaze. I know. Clara watched the stormy sea for a long moment before speaking again. When you dismissed me in that hall, her voice trembled slightly. Something inside me broke quietly. I loved you so much then, enough to lose myself entirely. Pain crossed Adrian's face. I know. No, she whispered. I do not think you did. He stepped closer carefully. I know now. For the first time, his voice carried no restraint, no armor, no distance. I loved you from the beginning, Clara. I simply feared everything that came with it. Exposure, weakness, needing someone. His eyes burned with regret. And by the time I understood what you were to me, I had already wounded you beyond forgiveness. Filled Clara's eyes despite herself, because this was the man she once waited endlessly for, the man finally standing vulnerable before her. Too human now to feel untouchable. I hated how much power you had over my happiness, she admitted quietly. Adrian's expression softened painfully. You have all of mine. The rain deepened around them. Then slowly, Adrian did something Clara had never seen before. He began reading aloud from the speech she had handed him. His stutter caught immediately, hard, visible, painful, but he did not stop. Again and again, he forced himself through the words while rain soaked his coat completely. Clara stared at him in shock. What are you doing? I spent my entire life hiding, he said unevenly. Hiding my voice, my fear, my feelings for you. He swallowed hard. I will not hide from you anymore. Emotion broke across Clara's face, because she understood what this cost him. The Duke of Ashcombe feared public humiliation more than anything in the world, and yet here he stood, willingly vulnerable before her, not as a duke, as a man. Adrian stepped closer slowly. If you ask me to leave now, he whispered, struggling through the words, I will go, but this time you will know the truth before I do. Clara's tears finally fell, not from heartbreak anymore, from release, years of pain, longing, humiliation, love buried beneath survival, all of it breaking open at once. You hurt me deeply, she whispered. I know, part of me still fears loving you. I know. Honesty between them felt raw and frightening, but real, for the first time, truly real. Clara looked at him through rain and trembling breath. Then she stepped forward very carefully and placed her hand against his cheek. Adrian closed his eyes immediately like a man reaching warmth after endless winter. I cannot return to who I was before, she whispered. You should never have to. I will never beg to be chosen again. You will never need to. Voice broke completely on the final words. Clara almost smiled through tears. Then slowly, gently, she rested her forehead against his. Harbor disappeared around them, only rain remained, and two people finally standing without pride between them. Months later, society nearly collapsed from shock when the Duke of Ashcombe publicly announced his intention to marry Clara Whitmore, not a noble heiress, not a political alliance. A bankrupt baron's daughter once mocked by London itself. Whispers spread immediately. Criticism followed. Adrian ignored every word. Because this time, when society turned cruel, he stood beside her openly, always. At their wedding reception, Clara noticed something quietly astonishing. Adrian was speaking publicly, not perfectly, never perfectly, but without shame. And each time his voice faltered slightly, he looked toward her, only her, as though she alone made the fear survivable. Late that evening, after the final guests departed, Clara stood with Adrian beneath the estate balcony while snow drifted softly across the gardens. London glittered below them in silver candlelight. "You once asked what you were to me," Adrian said quietly. Clara looked up at him, his hand tightened gently around hers. "You were every brave thing I could not become alone." Emotion filled her chest, so suddenly she could barely breathe. Years ago, she had stood humiliated in a ballroom, believing no one would ever truly choose her. Now the same man who once feared loving her looked at her as though losing her would destroy him entirely. And perhaps that was the deepest kind of love after all, not perfect, not easy, but earned through every wound they survived together. Snow continued falling softly around them while Adrian kissed her forehead with quiet reverence. And for the first time in both their lives, neither of them felt alone anymore.